Welcome, everyone. This is our Tuesday, March 12th.
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Most merciful and heavenly Father, we come to you now asking for your guidance. Father, ask for your patience. Father, ask for all the consideration for those who are present. Father, also ask you to guide us so that we may be a blessing in our leadership. Give us the wisdom to do that job and do it with taste and honor and dignity. These and all other blessings ask in your matchless Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Okay, next we're going to have the swearing in and seating of our new council member, Miss Emily Burden. And any family members or friends or whoever wants to come on down. Might not be room for all of you, but bigger building. Get mom.
Are you
Well, I will administer the oath of Bluffton Town Council at one time. You will repeat after me. You ready?
ready?
Okay.
I, Emily Burden,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I am duly qualified,
that I am duly qualified,
according to the Constitution of this state,
according to the Constitution of this state,
to exercise
to exercise
the duties of the office
the duties of the
to
office
which I have been elected,
to which I have been elected,
and that I will,
and that I will,
to the best of my
to
ability,
the best of my ability,
discharge the duties thereof,
discharge the duties thereof,
and preserve, protect, and defend the
the
Constitution
Constitution
of this state
of this state
and of the United States.
and of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
As council member of the town of Bluffton,
As council member of the town of Bluffton,
I will equally, fairly,
and impartially,
to the best of my
to
ability
the best of my ability
and skill, exercise
exercise
the trust reposed in me,
the trust proposed in me,
and I will use my best endeavors
and I will use my best
to
endeavors
preserve
to
the peace
the peace
and carry into effect,
and carry into effect,
according to the law,
the
purposes for which I have been elected.
the purposes to which I have been elected.
So help me God.
So help me God. Thank you.
Okay. Congratulations, All right, we're going to move on to the adoption of the agenda. Mr. Steve, is there any changes to the agenda?
I have none, sir. I heard, do you have any that you would like to make?
Yes, one, is there a motion to remove the executive session?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So that, any other, changes to the agenda?
No, sir.
All right, now we'll move to the adoption of the minutes of the February 13th, 24 meeting. Are there any changes to it? If none, is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion on it? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's approved. Now, presentation, celebrations and recognition of school district character student of the month. And this is Miss Chase Hutchins, Mr. Chase Hudson, from Bluffton Elementary. And his character trait is perseverance. Welcome, sir. You want to say anything, tell them anything? You know why you're here? You don't know why you're here? Well, maybe somebody can help us out here.
You wrote it up. All right, so Chase won the January Student of the Month for having the character trait of perseverance.
All right.
You get a little gift. Two of them, actually. Okay? And this is for you. And you get one more big gift. Tell this lady over here what you like to eat for lunch, and I'm gonna come have lunch with you.
It was lunch.
Help them out. Hold it.
Well, we're very proud of you. Keep up the hard work. We love our kids here, and we're always here if you ever need us for anything, okay? See you next time. Wendy Burkowski. Okay, this is the Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month proclamation. How are you?
How are you?
Good. Whereas more than 500,000 South Carolina residents and families are impacted by severe lifelong disabilities, including autism, head injuries, spinal cord injuries, intellectual disabilities, and related disabilities, without regard to race, culture, geography, age, sex, or economic class. And whereas the people with lifelong disabilities are productive citizens, neighbors, and family members, deserving our respect and opportunities for the economic self-sufficiency, independence, and personal growth in the South Carolina Department of Disabilities and Special Needs, along with the Beaufort County Disabilities and Special Needs Board, work with families to provide services that promote independence and inclusion. And whereas we owe a special debt of gratitude to the caregivers who selflessly provide physical, emotional, and spiritual support to our residents with disabilities and special needs. And whereas Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month celebrates the success partnership between people with and without disabilities, as well as increasing the involvement of people with disabilities in education, employment, and community activities. Now, therefore, I, Larry C. Toomer, along with Bluffton Town Council, do hereby proclaim March 24th as Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month in the town of Bluffton, and encourage our citizens to work together to promote increased opportunities for people with disabilities. to recognize the many contributions made by the people with disabilities to our community, and to honor the dedication of the caregivers who bring support and hope to their fellow citizens.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You want to say a few words?
Well, I just want to thank you and the council for recognizing a department of the county that does as much work and the staff that works as hard as they do to provide for the people in need in the county.
Right, well, thank you
So
for
thank
all
you.
that you do. Thank you. Now, the next one is someone I know. Leslie? Is she here? Leslie Rollins? So we're gonna do it without her or no? Put it off until next time. Yeah. She did confirm? But she's not here. I don't see her. So I guess we'll just.
Do it next month. Next month.
Yeah. That's fine. Okay, next on our agenda, where are we at? Let's see.
County transportation update.
Right here, public comment, right? Yeah, Beaufort County Transportation Update by Jared Fralix, Assistant County Administrator, Infrastructure. I didn't see you back there either. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good to be here. First time to get to see you all this year, and first time to get to present with you in the middle. So I was thinking to myself in the back that the presentations are mixed with the celebrations and proclamations. I don't know if that's fair. So anyways, and Ms. Burton, congratulations on your new seat. So. I do not have any backup slides today. Just want to talk kind of at a high level, a couple of things that we are working on, two of which are mentioned here with the access management plan on Buckwalter and then the traffic impact analysis ordinance. So just real quick, the Buckwalter access management plan, I was here probably about a year and a half or 2 years ago. We were talking about Buckwalter access management plan. So why am I here again? Well, the reason was that plan was an update to an earlier plan. We had a plan in 2007 of where we're going to lay out our traffic signals and our connector roads, but it was only on the northern section. Don't ask me why. How come they didn't do the whole road back in 2007? I don't know. But they basically did from 278 down to the northern section of Bluffton Parkway. So once we got done with that update, we said, you know what, why don't we take a look and go ahead and make a formal plan for the remainder of Buckwalter. And again, to plan our signal locations and access roads as a framework for where we want those assets to be as the rest of the area develops. So we're working through that. We've been coordinating with town staff. And we have a draft review of that. We're getting ready to, our process is we would take that to our planning commission for a presentation there. And then after that to our public facilities committee, and then an ordinance with 3 readings at our town, or at our county council. So that's kind of the order of the process where we are. In general, what we have is the signals. There's not as much variation in the southern section as there is in the northern section. The northern section is more commercial than the southern section of Buckwalter. The northern section, when it was developed in 2007, it's been over 15 years since that was updated. And so how did we do with our initial plan? Did we stick to it? Are there updates we need to? There's not as many updates in the southern section that we expect. One of the ones being the intersection at the start of Buckwalter or Bluffton Parkway. If that was to shift then the next signal down at the Parkers at Lake Point Drive, then that would need to shift. So want to make sure our spacing is constant, that we can continue to keep traffic flowing throughout the area and make sure our signals are evenly spaced as best as we can. Also down on the southern section near the schools and near the recreation center, want to make sure that we're providing safe access for the schools, the school buses turning in and out, as far as improvements that we have planned for the Buckwalter Recreation Center expansion, both around the soccer field area and also at 46. So making sure we have access roads and connectivity. The plans in general, we'll come back to you formally and coordinate with staff on that as a formal presentation, but it's basically rudimentary as far as the exact location of these access roads, but it's basically setting the framework. So when development comes, we have the framework to say, hey, we need to make sure we have cross connectivity to keep the main road flowing with traffic as planned. So that's where we are with the access management plan, again, for the southern section. As far as the TIA ordinance, traffic impact analysis, what our goal is and intent is to create a regional plan that all of us, the county and Jasper County and the municipalities can have some framework where we're evaluating developments from a traffic perspective on an even basis. So one municipality is not treating development differently. So we kind of have a criteria, base criteria that we're all evaluating proposed developments. We've currently, where we are in that, we've coordinated this through LATS, our regional planning organization. We made a presentation both at the policy committee and at the technical committee. We've had 2 meetings with the technical committee to discuss this. One first to introduce it, and second to get down in some of the details. I believe at the next technical committee, we'll continue to work through some of those details. One of the main points, this is an idea that came up, one of our traffic engineers that does a lot of work said, hey, maybe this is something you should think about. Some of the municipalities and organizations in the Charleston area and Berkeley and Dorchester area, they've done something like this and they've seen some success. One of the things that we have planned in the ordinance is looking at the developments as they come in. A lot of times you may have an out-of-town developer and they have their own engineer and traffic engineer and they come in. Well, they don't necessarily have all the inputs of all the other developments that are next to them, either directly adjacent to their property or just down the road, that impact the way their proposed development will affect the traffic on the road. So the idea is that if we have a group of consultants, we have at Beaufort County an on-call list of 3 traffic control or traffic design consultants, and we would utilize that list. And they would be the ones that development comes in, we have this proposed project, and the developer would be responsible for outlining that, and then we would do the actual traffic and impact analysis as the county, and with their inputs with our on-call design engineer. And that way, again, we make sure that we have a repository of all the different developments and inputs. So this development affects that development versus in their study, it may just be that, hey, we just need to put a signal in front of our development, but that's not the whole picture. So the intent is to kind of attack this regionally. That's the reason we're working through LATS. All the different municipalities and Jasper County are approaching it a little bit different, trying to use a similar path that was used for the Soloco Stormwater Manual. So whether everybody passes the exact same ordinance or some iteration of it, at least we're all thinking in the same mindset. So trying to address our traffic where we're all equally versus one's doing something a little bit different. So that's the intent. We're working through that. Again, we're going to go back to the LATS technical committee and trying to iron out some details. And then that too, we would take to our planning commission and then our public facilities and then the county council. So those are kind of 2 big things that we're working on. Just wanted to give you guys a heads up. And then we'll be coming back formally with the access management plan. And then town staff is working on their version of that impact ordinance as mentioned. So glad to take any questions.
I just got one quick comment. Wouldn't it have been great if we'd have thought of this 25 years ago?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Anything from council, Ms. Frazier?
So it's great that we get to get these updates, to see how your plans are working with Bluffton. I'm interested to know, do you guys have similar conversations with like SCDOT, as many of our roads here are in your jurisdiction and theirs, to make sure like there's a cohesion in mitigating the issues that we are seeing with traffic?
Yep, absolutely. So I'm glad you mentioned 90% of the roads in the county and throughout the state are DOT owned. So yes, we are. In the past, we haven't. So a good case example, we had a plan on 170, which is beyond Bluffton, but 170 towards 278, 462. And DOT, we said this is how we're going to perform this, this section of road. This is where the signals are going to line out. And DOT was approving plans that were not in line with what we locally said we wanted where the signal layout. Well, we hadn't adopted it, and so they are not enacting it. So the idea of us working together locally, but also with DOT, so that they will uphold what we approve locally, what we want the layout to be, whether it's their road or, in our case, a county-owned road.
Thank you.
Mr. Wood?
Yes, sir. So on the access management, LATS is doing studies. You would wait, it's a question, would you wait to get the LATS studies in before you do the access management plan in whole?
Not on Buckwalter. So the plans that LATS is looking at, there's one on Bluffton Parkway specifically, and then there's one on Southern Beaufort County and Jasper County. So the Bluffton Parkway would cross the section of Buckwalter. But what we're working on right now on the Buckwalter access, it has a provision, if there's any changes at that cross location, it could be accommodated in what we're working on now.
And then the TIA ordinance, you mentioned SoLoco. Are you going to utilize SoLoco as a jumping off organization to maybe help coordinate this throughout the two-county region?
Well, so the way we approached it so far is we've used LAT, since they're the transportation planner, as the organization versus SoLoco. And then we're working with the staffs of all the municipalities who also are represented at LATS. So I think SoLoco is another place for us to present and present at SoLoco what we're working towards, just as I am right here today. But we're working through LATS versus SoLoco directly.
Mayor, may I ask one more?
Certainly.
The signalization, synchronization, how long before we would see the merits of something like that?
So the plan doesn't specifically spell out the synchronization. It just is more the location and the access roads, the geometry basically. So that's more of a ITS plan, and at LATS as well. We're working on the archetype for a regional ITS master plan. So to lay out that synchronization and how they all interact with one another, signals. So that's another study. LATS has about 5 different studies that they're working on regionally. And then that'll be the framework that we can start implementing projects based off that plan.
Thank you, Jared.
Jared, I found that our traffic impact analysis study didn't work for a long time. How are we upgrading that? And have different development almost coming online at the same time, and they have separate traffic and studies, analysis. The math doesn't work. So have you guys addressed that yet?
So we can't correct the past, but we're, from this point forward, drawing a line in the sand, and this is how we're going to approach it moving forward. And the goal is that versus having one traffic study right here and the next one saying something different, having a repository of information where these kind of, for us, the 3 firms that we have readily available share that information. So if they're reviewing this one or working on this one, they know what the other one is saying, so that it's represented, so their impact is represented equally in both studies, if that helps.
That helps. The other question is, while we're trying to bring the region together, what kind of cooperation you getting from other municipalities?
It's been great. So again, using LATS as our framework, there's already a good cooperative environment there. And then, so we are working at a technical committee with all the staffs. And again, everybody's been open arms, and anything we can do to work together it's been a good process.
Thank you. Mr. Burton?
No questions.
Thank you, Jared. I think what you were saying that you're working on trying to create answered Fred's question by taking in consideration what's coming, not just what's coming next month, but what's coming next year.
Yep.
And realistically, I wish we'd have done that 25 years ago. And
Yep.
we wouldn't have some of the situations we have now, but.
Well, if we don't do it now, in
Working on
25
that, and
years,
if we can help in any kind of way, we're here to let us know what we can do and give you some more support to get it done.
Great, absolutely. Thank you all very much.
Okay, it's time to move to public comment. Is there any more public comments, or is?
We have 4 public comments this evening.
Yeah, I have 4 up here, so, you want to call the first one?
Lynn Greeley.
Did she say Mike Raymond?
No, but I
Well, now, oh yeah, I need to borrow Dan.
Since we've already called her name, let me give her an opportunity to appear.
Absolutely.
Ms. Greeley, are you in the house? I don't see her here.
Mr. Raymond, would you like to go next?
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and congratulations to the Honorable Emily Burton. My name's Mike Raymond. I live on Ginkgo Lane in Bluffton, and I'm here to talk about something I've talked about before, and that is expanding the number of seats on this council. You know, back when we were 1 square mile and less than 1,000 people, a 5-person council was just fine. But today, our population is 40 times greater than it was then. And our area is 50 times larger. Yet here we are, still with a council of 5. In fact, the first 2 meetings of this year, y'all had a council of 4. Our 40,000 residents deserve broader representation than what we had back in the 1960s. And this isn't just about an explosion in our population. Your budget has grown tremendously. Your staff has grown. Our capital improvement projects are bigger and more expensive than ever. The demand for you to be involved, each one of you on committee assignments, y'all should be screaming for help. When you expand from 5 seats to 7, you gain 40% more in resources. You gain knowledge, skills, and life experiences that can come to this table and be part of the debate. All of this is in the best interest of Bluffton. And it's not something that you do a straw poll on the public. It's something for you, the leadership, to advocate on behalf of the public. You work with staff to build a public education component. You work to build a positive campaign, and then you put it on the ballot. This is something that the leadership needs to do to keep Bluffton government current, to keep Bluffton government up to speed. It is something that I urge you to do very quickly. Get behind this, put it on the next ballot. Thank you for listening. I'll see y'all next month.
Thank you, Mr. Raymond.
Bluffton, South Carolina. Bridget Frazier, Chef B's food truck owner, owner of Ma Daisy Restaurant, president of MLK Committee, Juneteenth organizer that bring thousands of people to Bluffton, organizes warming shelter for the homeless during the cold months and the winter, worked with the police department to bring on a board, a personnel person for mental health, and provided over 20,000 meals to students when COVID was here. Now, the Bluffton Police Department vision statement says, we will strive to be innovative, progressive, and transparent. We are committed to serving our team and the community with integrity, courage, and professionalism. Your SHIELD core values are serving with passion, honor, integrity, excellence, leadership, and dedication. Well, the police department currently did not shield this community leader, who is a beacon of light and activist working toward inclusion and equality for all people in Bluffton. That's why I'm truly saddened and troubled by the arrest of Bridget Frazier, who was handcuffed and treated like a criminal for an alleged traffic violation and was hauled away to jail, processed and put in an orange suit, and had a mugshot on Saturday, March 9th, with false charges of DUS, offense with no prior criminal records. Now, for a first offense DUS, the police officer could have issued her a citation. The chief of police could have instructed the police officer to just let her go. But to my understanding, that didn't happen. So our Black community and others who know Bridget is devastated that why she was treated on Saturday as a criminal, without full and thorough investigation of this hideous arrest for someone who is Black and has no prior criminal arrest, and we want the removal of anyone complicit of wrongdoing. I am requesting that the chief of police set up a meeting with the African American community and have conversation as to why should we trust the police department again after this change within our community when it comes to race, equality, inclusiveness, and our community continues to grow. We want to know why wasn't a citation issued until further investigation with this arrest on Bridget that the chief, town of Bluffton Police Department could have been avoided. The Bluffton Police Department, it says, they have gone and worked with Bridget diligently, and I can't understand how you guys shamed this woman, arrested her for a citation that nobody thought there could have been a clerical error. That's a damn shame. Our African American.
That concludes our public comment. Move over to Mayor and Council Communications. Anything from Council, Ms. Bridget, you want to start?
I just wanted to respond in regards to the traumatizing and very unfortunate situation I was subjected to this past weekend. Don't really want to go into much details, but just wanted to say that I will be vindicated. I will be seeking justice for those actions, but I also wanted to thank those who've reached out to me and my family and offered support and encouragement in such a very traumatizing experience. And just want to thank you all and ask for your continued prayers and support in that endeavor.
I did not make this the other night, but I know our Don Ryan Center was receiving an award, and I think the town manager can speak to that better than I can in a moment. But I don't know if they're in the room this evening, but I do want to congratulate Chris. I believe you were there. Heather was there.
The Golden Oyster Award.
Yes, sir. Golden Oyster from the Greater Bluffton Chamber of Commerce. So that's a great accomplishment. I know where we were with this organization in the Don Ryan Center a few years ago, and I think we've come light years. And so I think it's all positive and a very good thing for the town and the community.
Thank you. Mr. Fred?
I have nothing that I want to share, but I do want to welcome Emily to the and hopefully we can help you to be successful in this endeavor. And if anything I can do, I'll be glad. I'm just a phone call away.
And all I've got is, Bridget, on the whole situation with you, you know, that doesn't sound right, but we'll be looking into it and trying to get all the information that's needed, and we'll be in discussions about whether something needs to change or not. And Right now, I personally don't have all the information or documentation. Haven't even talked to many people involved, so we will be looking into it and seeing if it's something that needs to be fixed or just what it is. So,
Well said, Larry.
thank you. Next, we're gonna move on to our workshop agenda items. We have a presentation on opioid settlement funds and purposed uses. Chief Joe Babkowitz.
That was negotiated with pharmaceutical companies due to the overprescribing and resulting addiction and deaths. This was handled through the state, and as a party to the suit, we have a direct allotment of funds. These funds were $25,915.25. These funds do come with very specific guidelines for their use, and we've been reviewing some of the options that we can utilize them for. Some of the things that we're restrictive to, some of the things that we can utilize them for. The first is naloxone, or as you guys may know it as Narcan, which is a medicine you can give somebody that may have just overdosed on something. Medical assistant treatment, pregnant and postpartum women, expanding treatment for neonatal absenteeism syndrome, expansion of warm handoff programs, treatment for incarcerated populations, prevention education programs, expanding syringe service programs, and evidence-based data collection. What we did was we identified some of the stakeholders in our community. That included people who have experienced addiction, as well as some of our nonprofit organizations out there that are already doing some reach-out programs that can help us. What they identified that we were lacking in this area was access to information for detox, recovery, and rehabilitation centers. Inability to obtain or purchase Narcan because of the cost of Narcan. It typically runs between $40 and $50 per box. Educating young adults on dangers of opioids in the community, as well as education for families who have someone who is addicted to drugs and or alcohol. Based on those inputs provided, the police department, the needs in our community, we believe a winning grant strategy is to focus on prevention programs as our core abatement strategy. Specifically, the efforts of media campaigns and medical provider education and outreach programs. We've identified 2 community coalition nonprofit partners already generating these campaigns and outreach by providing additional funds from the town's allotment of the opioid settlement. The first one, and you guys, I'm sure, have all heard of Low Country Alliance for Healthy Youth. We met with Dr. Novins and how we could team up with them. We want to dedicate $10,400.96 for social and traditional media campaigns, and that's to get education out there to our young adults going through high school and middle school, not just in Bluffton, but also in Hilton Head, because they serve both schools. It's really geared towards promotion of the opioid issue and what addiction can do as they grow older. The second group is the Beaufort County First Responders Project, and we want to allocate $20,000 for them. The purpose and the reason why we set aside more money for them is because they are going to help us purchase Narcan that we can essentially give out to people in our community. What they're doing is they're going around and they are teaching family members about the use of Narcan and how to utilize Narcan, and after the class, they will issue them Narcan for free. And so they are going to help us. If they order in bulk the Narcan, then we can get it at a much lower cost. It will also help us supply our officers with more than one Narcan. Right now, we have to get Narcan through DHEC, but we only get 1 box, which contains 2 sprays. If we use them both on one scene, then the officers are out until we get more from DHEC. This will provide more supply to our officers, but also people in our community who have family members that are suffering from addiction. Questions?
Go ahead.
So my concern is, I know that the opioid addiction is definitely prevalent in our society. But my concern is I don't want to see like the funding be used towards symbolic gestures in terms of, I think the Youth of Healthy Alliance is a great program. They do great things. But the folks who are suffering with that addiction, my concern is, are they going to be the ones best served by this? Like, how do we reach the people who actually may not come and attend a workshop or forum, but who are users that are in need of some type of help to be able to overcome that addiction? How do we ensure that funds are going to the folks that need it and not necessarily somewhere where it's going to be a preaching to the choir type effort? And have we thought of ways of where those needs are to reach those who are actually in need of that assistance right now?
Yes, ma'am. That's why we identified one of our stakeholders is a recovering addict. She's Krista Flanders. She's in the audience now. And she knows a lot of people in that realm that can draw people to some of these presentations that we're going to be doing, where we can issue Narcan and we can educate them. So partnering with her is definitely a plus for us to reach out to the people that we don't know are suffering from addiction.
And my last question, because I saw one of the allowable uses was for those who are incarcerated. So I'm assuming it's a sense you might pick someone up and see that they are a user of this particular drug. Are there ways, or has there been a strategy, and how do we know that that person is probably going to be released in some time? How do we get them from that point into either pairing them up with a some type of program or one of the anonymous Narcotics Anonymous groups in the area where they could actually go right from release into something that's going to help them overcome this?
What we would do with that situation is we would use our social worker, reading the reports, identifying anyone that may have drug addiction, that may have been arrested, and reaching out to those families and letting them know of the programs that we have. We can't force them to come to the programs, but we can certainly encourage them and educate them on the programs that we do have.
And the Beaufort County Drug Court can also help with that type of requirement.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Chief, yes, sir. We've had some conversations, and I don't know how you solve the issue. The only places to get treatment are Charleston and Columbia, in a state of about 6 million people. And I think that we're going to have to explore conversations with our local jurisdictions and our county at some point, maybe this year, hopefully, to determine if there is an appetite to figure out how to address that problem. When you're in this lifestyle, some people can afford it, but a lot of people can't. And then they get caught in that rut, and they certainly don't have the means to go seek treatment somewhere. You know, you may have to have a place to stay, have to have the trip there. I don't know how much it all costs to go through that. So I think we need to figure out, is there an alternative? And I know that I did talk to one hospital CEO. I was supposed to get back to him on this topic. I failed to do that. I think there might be an opportunity there to get some information from them to see how we move forward with it.
Yes, sir. And speaking with Krista, one of the biggest issues around here is if you don't have insurance, it's very, very hard to get in and afford some type of treatment. And then getting up to Columbia and Charleston, how do people get up there? You would have to have a friend that gives them a ride and get up there. So I would certainly support something local where people who suffer from addiction can get that treatment. Absolutely.
Mr. Hamilton?
I have nothing, thank you.
Sir.
I think this is a great start, and so thank you for this. Krista, thank you for bringing this to attention. I think this is badly needed in the area.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm gonna do something a little different. Krista, would you like to come up and say a few words? Very proud of what you've accomplished, and maybe you can tell your story a little bit.
Thank you. I'm just honored to be here instead of serving, it would be 10 years in my 20-year sentence right now. I'm 8 years sober. I got sober in county jail. I was offered treatment in county jail by a public defender. I've been arrested numerous times, dozens of times, and that last time was the only time someone ever offered me treatment. I kind of had no other option. My bond was $25,000, and I couldn't go back to Hilton Head. I was raised on Hilton Head, couldn't go back to that. So I sold everything I owned and followed his directions and went to Greenwood, South Carolina, stayed for 5 months, came back, and I've been sober ever since. And I recover out loud so people don't have to suffer in silence. As I'm speaking right now, every 4 minutes, someone dies from an overdose. We lost 112,000 people in America last year, and that's a wake-up call. In Beaufort County alone, it's literally I'm missing my son's 5-year-old soccer practice right now, but everyone on that field is like what we lost last year. Just speaking about it, there's no place for detox. You can't go to a hospital and detox. You can't go to treatment without detox. I've been helping people left and right. My own husband was saved by a Bluffton police officer with Narcan 4 years ago, and he's been sober ever since. And we had to go far away for that. And that shouldn't be the issue. There should be a bridge. It shouldn't be hard to change your life. As recovering addicts, we work on ourselves every single day. We're not liars. We used to be. It took a long time to get here, but we are probably the most honest people you will ever meet. And we're just sharing our recovery to stay sober. And I think everyone's like listening to me. You guys are listening, and things are happening and changes are happening, and Jasper County's making moves, and we're gonna do something big here. And my inbox is full every day of people going, where do I go? Where do I go? And I'm like, I guess just try to go to MUSC in Charleston and ask to detox, and they usually kick you out. So we have a foundation right here in our seats, Spirit Sebastian. They lost their son almost to the day a year ago. It wasn't a choice. He didn't know he was taking fentanyl. It's heartbreaking. He was 21 forever. But they stepped up, and they have started a foundation too, and they have sent numerous people to treatment. They have their first alumni who's seven months sober, and working together, we're gonna make a change. And I've saved thousands of lives, and that's just from me telling my worst day and just giving hope. So thank you for listening to me, and thank you for listening.
Thank you for all you're doing. One more question, go ahead.
Yeah, I had one more comment. I wanted to thank Krista for that, sharing her story and testimony and dedicating that to helping others, really impactful. I just wanted to put on us while we're having the conversation about addiction to give some considerations also to other addicts, not necessarily related to opioids, in a sense where we know that opioid use and fentanyl has been humanized as it's gone from the streets into the suburbs and seen that impact. But we still have people who've suffered from cocaine, crack addictions who didn't get that same type of humanization or empathy to be able to get on the path of recovery. And at some point, it'd be nice to have conversations to include them too. As you stated, sometimes it's not a choice. And their lives matter and should be valued too. And if we can help them, we should extend that courtesy as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from council? Terry?
If I could, Mayor and Council, I had the privilege in 2017 of being contacted by a law firm in New York who asked us to get involved with the opioid litigation. That led to me and our firm becoming one of the 4 plaintiff lawyers for the state of South Carolina in the opioid litigation. It also led to Beaufort County being one of the bellwether counties, with Spartanburg, Lexington, and Beaufort were the 3 bellwether counties where the first opioid litigation trials would be held in South Carolina. We were able to have 42 of the 46 counties in our state under our little umbrella of 4 plaintiff lawyers throughout the state. The settlements that have been reached so far are going to generate, we believe, somewhere a little bit north of $500 million for the state of South Carolina. It'll be paid out over a lengthy period of time, unfortunately. But what we're most proud of is that, contrary to the tobacco settlements and the asbestos settlements, about 85% of the opioid settlement dollars are going to the local municipalities to help local people, and it's not going in the bank in Columbia. We should be getting somewhere in this range of $30,000 for the next, I think it's 12 years. Chief has done a great job researching what we can and cannot do with the money. Beaufort was not a named litigant in the lawsuit. It was just Beaufort County as one of the, we did it on a countywide basis. And that meant that Bluffton gets money but didn't have to pay legal fees for it. So it's worked out well. Chief and his staff have done a great job because it's not just holding out your hand and getting the money. You have to give a specific program to Columbia before they approve it and write the check. So more checks to come. We are still fighting the Purdue bankruptcy issues. We have 3 or 4 other bankruptcies that we're still working on, Endo, and a couple others. And we have, I think, 2 more legitimate target defendants left, and then the litigation will essentially be over. So, Chief, you've done a great job. Spend it wisely, help as many people as you can, because everybody in this room has had somebody in their family or a friend that has been impacted or lost because of opioids. So thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on. To upcoming items and amendments to the Town of Bluffton Code of Ordinance. Mr. Kevin Eichard, Director of Growth Management. Take it away, Mr. Kevin.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. Councilwoman Burden, congratulations. Glad to see you up here. I've got a couple of items that I'd like to go over, and this is meant to be very high level of projects that we have moving forward over the next couple of months that will be coming to you. Specifically, as you heard, one was the traffic impact analysis. Jared did a great job of explaining like the overall approach to it. From the town's process, this will be incorporated into the Unified Development Ordinance. Our goal is to bring this language in front of you, working concurrently with the county, so that way we can tailor the language to fit in our ordinance, but then also it meets the needs that they have. One of the items that was kind of touched on, and I think it was Councilman Hamilton, was about existing TIAs that are used. One of the goals of what we're saying is that these traffic impact analysis would be valid for 1 year. If there is no development happens within that 1 year of them actually starting the process and then moving forward with development, if they don't do anything, like they would have to come back to us to get that updated. So in the past, it's been where traffic impact analysis that were years old were being used, and so that will no longer be the case. You'd have to have an updated traffic impact analysis. So that's part of that. What I'd like to do, if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of run through these topics first. And then just give you kind of the timeline for each one of them, and then we can ask questions from there, if that's okay.
Sure.
The next item we have is dealing with some additional UDO edits. We do have, back last year, May of last year, Supreme Court made a decision where the Clean Water Act, it lost protection of some of the wetlands. So what happens is that individuals now have the ability to fill in some of these wetlands. They gave it to the state to regulate it, as opposed to on the federal level. State is working through making changes to their ordinances, and in the interim, our goal is to, and this is a Band-Aid, this is meant to be a Band-Aid, is to provide a buffer around existing wetlands that we have. Now, if you have a permit to impact a wetland, that's still valid. You're still allowed to make the impacts necessary from that. Now, if you do not have a valid wetland impact, then this buffer would come into place. As of right now, we're proposing a 25-foot buffer around these wetlands. With that, we are still working through, we started to use the National Wetlands Inventory, but I'm being told that that's probably not the most accurate data to use, so we're going to confirm that. We are working with our watershed department, as well as some outside engineers, to make sure that this language is appropriate. So as we bring this forward, next we'll have it through Planning Commission, ultimately back in front of Town Council. Other items is an update to our comprehensive plan. As you all know, State law now has the ability to use up to 15% of state ATAX towards affordable housing. We currently meet local requirements to use the local ATAX for affordable housing, but this is specifically for the state. So our goal is to update the comprehensive plan to meet the criteria that the state has put out there. And the last item that we have is we actually have one of our development agreements that's finally expiring. That is the Bluffton Village PUD. So we're working, that is the expiration date on that is October 17th of this year. And in a second here, I'll show you a timeline. Our goal is to kind of back into that date so that way we can put provisions in place in the Unified Development Ordinance that clearly defines densities and land uses that are currently allowed in the in that PUD, but we're memorializing it in the Unified Development Ordinance, so that way in the future, if there's any questions as to what each lot is allowed to have in a density standpoint, there's a table in the ordinance that will clearly indicate how much density is allotted for each use. I know that's a lot, it's very, very high level. So a couple of things that we have is, does Town Council want to move forward with this proposed traffic impact analysis? And if so, here's a timeline that we have. Obviously, we have a workshop this evening. And then the Planning Commission will have a public hearing. We'll do that in April and bring this back in first reading and second reading in June and July. And that date of April is tentative, and that's just based off of Beaufort County of how they're moving forward with that. So it is subject to change. The next item is the wetlands impact. If you wish to move forward with the proposed changes along those buffers, our goal is to actually bring this in front of, we're taking this on an elevated time frame. This will go into Planning Commission this month of March, and then we'll bring it back to you in April and in May. As for the ATAX funding, if you so choose to move forward, our goal is to have a Planning Commission workshop in April with the Planning Commission recommendation in May as required by code, and then a first and second readings in July and August. And we are working with the Finance Department to ensure that we're meeting all the criteria that they need. And then my understanding is that the first round would not be until approximately September, to where we could potentially move forward with requesting those funds. Okay. And then the last item is just the, does Town Council want to move forward with amending the UDO? If so, what we'd like to do is have some community meetings with individuals over at Bluffton Village. I've already been in contact with the management group that's out there. They are aware, and we want to educate them on what's happening. So we would have those meetings with them throughout the summer, bring this in front of Planning Commission in July, and then Town Council September and October. I went through that very quickly. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Let's just go back to the first one, Kevin, and we'll
Yes, sir.
check it off the list and move to the second and see if anybody's got anything. So any comments on this, Bridget? You have anything down there? On the traffic impact analysis, anybody? Okay, move forward with that one. And this is the amendment to the wetlands. You got a comment? Go ahead.
So I see, Kevin, we have the 25-foot buffer proposed here. We were in South Carolina for the legislation day with our delegates, and this was an issue we raised with the effect this has on some of our native residents on Buck Island and Simmonsville. And because of the Supreme Court designation that was removed, we have home rule and are able to come up with our own policies. As the state said, they're probably going to take a while to enact something. So with that being said, I want to see some inclusion of what we can do on the residential side, specifically to protect those residents on Buck Island and Simmonsville, because as folks are purchasing properties there, what we're seeing is they're going into areas that are wetlands and they're just piling up dirt on that property. And what's happening is all the water is flooding back to some residents, causing folks to have to be able to elevate storage sheds because of mold or fear of even that water is going to ruin their current properties. But it leaves, many folks' yards in those areas like ponds when it rains. And it's a problem that if we don't get ahead of is going to cause even more damage for those residents. So if we can even look at maybe triggering some type of review when those purchases happen to ensure that people aren't circumventing us and just adding right now, like dump trucks of dirt into those areas, or building on what should be wetlands, because if you have to pile up that much, clearly you probably shouldn't be building on it. So I want us to put some protections in there for those residents.
Okay.
That's all good. I just, the question I would have based on that is, when you do anything to the UDO, it's universal, isn't it?
Yes, sir. This is, this would
Not
be.
just targeting one area or anything, it's universal.
Yes, sir. It is universal, and as I stated, where if you have an existing wetlands impact, you're still allowed to impact those wetlands. And I will say that the majority of the planned unit developments that we have, they have self-imposed wetland buffers on them. So most of them are already meeting this requirement, but we do need to memorialize it through our code.
And while we know it's universal, that example was given specifically to where the issue is. We're not seeing those issues in other places, but if someone in another jurisdiction has that same problem, they should have those same protections, as we don't want anyone building on wetlands that they shouldn't be building on.
Fred, comments?
Piggyback where Bridget just left off. We have that problem not only where there may be a potential wetland, we have that problem when someone builds across the street or next door to you, and their elevation is much higher, but they don't maintain water on their property. So how do we, and we have to address that as well, because new development is definitely there's a cause and effect for the current landowner.
Yes, sir. What we can do is we can work on making sure to check our current ordinance of what we have, and then also determine if we do need some improvements to that, and then also from an enforcement standpoint.
Thank you.
Ms. Burton?
Okay.
So, like I said a couple of months ago when we just learned about this new thing, we need to get something in place as soon as ASAP. So I'm going to say, keep moving.
Yes, sir. Okay.
All right. Now this is on the ATAX, Funds for Affordable Housing. Bridget, got any comments on this? No?
No, I do. The timeline looks a little longer than any others.
Well, number one is, from a timing standpoint, we do have we're required to have a planning commission workshop anytime we do amendments to comprehensive plan. So we have that scheduled for April. And then we have to have a recommendation from planning commission, so that would be their next month. We do have a skip in there, and that's just to make sure, I mean, we can push that up to a June first reading with town council, and then a July 2nd reading with town council.
Council doesn't have a problem with that. That would be my recommendation.
Okay. I'm seeing nods of heads, so okay, yes, we can do that. Okay.
So, this is about as clear as mud to me, so.
Yes.
You agree?
Yes.
Okay, well, I didn't want to be the only one. No, I didn't want to be the only one in here that.
This is.
I'll wear it.
Yes.
I don't understand all of what you're talking about here.
It is, I will make sure that as we're bringing this forward, it'll be clearly outlined. It's a matter of, it's going to expire, and if we don't put provisions in place on the front end, so that way on that date when it does expire, it's kind of, it's a no man's land. So we don't want to be.
So basically, if it expires and we don't have safety guards or nets or whatever you want to call them in place, they could do more than what's allowed?
Potentially.
The zoning is now controlled by the development agreement. The development agreement specifies essentially what their zoning is. If the development agreement expires, then it's like no man's land. So we need to have something in place, a safety net, as I think you may mention. So I think that's exactly what Kevin and the staff's trying to do.
Okay,
Beat the expiration. Have something on the books before it expires.
Yes. As far as I'm concerned, anybody else got any questions on this? Okay,
Great. Thank you very much.
thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to our formal agenda items. And the first on the list is a consideration of an ordinance to amend Chapter 26, Traffic and Motor Vehicles, Article 7, Towing and Wrecker Services. It'll be first reading. Chief?
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. In January, we did a audit of some of the tow companies in town, and we saw some inconsistencies across the board with some of the charges and other additional issues with the tow ordinance and with what some of the tow companies were charging. We made suggested updates, towing a record. We want to reduce tow company billing errors, improve cost reasonableness, and establish better consistency in customer expectations. Before we talk about the two additional changes, we met with all of our local tow companies, all the stakeholders involved, as well as some citizens to discuss some of the issues that they faced when they went to go pick up their vehicle after it was towed, as well as talking with some of the tow companies and talking about some of the challenges that they face with increasing costs and several other issues. Two additional changes were made to the ordinance, as well as to go along with the fees. The process to submit new or revised qualification packages was updated, as well as clarifications to the required insurance coverage and evidence of vehicle ownership were suggested. You'll see the current fee is on the left and our recommended fee schedule is on the right. Not only did we meet with the tow companies and stakeholders to talk about their rising costs, but we also compared to other jurisdictions. We compared to the Beaufort County Sheriff's Office, as well as Highway Patrol, who also uses some of the same tow companies that we do, and their costs were higher than what we had set aside. And so our request is leave the police or the town of Bluffton vehicles at $75. Pick up disabled vehicles, we changed to law enforcement requested tow, and that's for $200. Without getting specific into the daytime and nighttime and everything else, we just wanted to leave it as one. If there was a collision, because of the complexity of the collision, we request, or the tow companies we discussed, that $300 would be a reasonable cost. For extensive tows or tows that require some additional, what we were seeing was hazardous tow or additional fees associated because if a vehicle went into the woods, they would charge extra for that, and reasonably so because it took much longer. So instead of doing that, we wanted to just say, okay, let's come up with a set rate if it goes past an hour. And that's not an hour from when they respond, it's an hour when they get to the scene is when that hour starts. And so it's $200 additional per hour. Storage fees per day, they were $25. They asked.
Stop you right there for a second, I might have missed it. So once they're on the scene.
Yes, sir, that's when the clock starts ticking.
So the first 300 is how many hours? How much time?
So if it's a collision, it's for the first hour.
1 hour.
Yes,
on
sir.
scene, 1 hour.
Yes,
and
sir.
then if it's over, it's $200 an hour.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And same thing with, if it's a law enforcement requested tow that's not involved with the collision, is $200. If it's over that hour, it's $300. Very rarely do we see anything over an hour for a tow unless it's a very complex accident or a rollover or something like that. The tow companies also asked, they are open 8 to 5 every day, 8 to 6 every day. That's considered their normal hours, but they are available after hours. But what was happening was they were calling their employees out and they didn't have any means to pay their employees. So they wanted to add on a gate fee for their employees to come out after hours to open up the gate for people coming to get their vehicle after hours. And then the administrative fee is where we saw the inconsistencies. The administration fee is something that they have to apply for after 7 days, and that's for title. It's a title thing that they have to do with DMV. And what we were seeing was some people were doing it after 1 day. So if my vehicle was towed because I didn't have insurance, and I went the next day, I got insurance and I came to get my vehicle, they were charging them $300 for this administrative fee. So we kind of sat down, they have to file it within 7 days. We said, what would be reasonable? And so we decided on 5 days. So the first 5 days, they will not be charged with the administrative fee. After 5 days, then they have to file that through DMV. And that's a $300 fee. So Town Council has the authority to take the following actions on the first reading of the proposed ordinance modification. Approve the ordinance as submitted, approve the ordinance with modifications, or deny the ordinance as submitted. That's the schedule. So first reading is today, and second and final reading would be scheduled for April 9th. Questions?
Questions, Ms. Burden?
I do not have any questions. I'm sure.
Mr. Hamilton?
Can you go back to the fees, please?
Yes, sir.
I know we have, everything it costs more to do business. But the rate that you're requesting to upcharge, if you will, seems a little bit drastic. For an example, $25 gate fee, $75 would be the asking price for gate fee.
That's after hours, so, right?
Yes, sir. That's for after hours.
All is after hours. 25 was after hours too. So we're looking to have some balance. We want to make sure that the tow company is compensated, but we also want to make sure that the citizen is not overtaxed.
Yes, sir.
So we have to have some balance. So number one, I'm willing to adjust the new fee to $50 instead of $75. And $125 to $200. That number bothers me as well, because I think that should be, and I don't have a great number, but I like to hear from the tow companies to get a better understanding. I like to also hear from the tow company. You know, I have not had a tow in a long time, but I can tell you that that's one of the areas that is not comfortable. It's for someone who's going through a hardship already. And so to keep increasing the hardship makes me kind of cringe, because when they can't afford these fees, then administrative fees come into play. Trying to figure out, how am I going to pay this? And within 5 days, now I got to pay another $300. It's not a good thing.
So we do have some tow companies here, but before that, Councilman Hamilton, just to give you an idea, the $200 is the same exact thing that Beaufort County utilizes. Highway Patrol is much more expensive. They start off at $257, and they range all the way up to $528.
Okay, let me address that for you. Highway Patrol doesn't have a Bluffton designation. Bluffton says you have to be a Bluffton business to get our business. Highway Patrol can call anybody. So I don't want to compare it with them, because that's not apples to apples, okay?
Yes, sir. So we can take it back to the table with the tow companies and see if we can readjust. What would be your opinion on a reasonable rate?
I'm not, that's why I wanted to hear from them, because I'm not sure on that.
Yes.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. As far as going back to the administrative fee, it sounds ugly when you put it on paper. And I suppose it is ugly, but it's a state law. You have to apply within 7 days, as the chief was saying. And so I actually pay another company to do that, and they have just recently raised their rates to $300. So just so we're clear, that is a cost. That's not a profit.
Explain that just a little bit better for me, because I don't understand yet.
Most towing companies, some do it in-house, but most use a title processing company. There's a lot of paperwork involved, a lot of extra legwork. And that fee that we physically pay for that is now $300.
So you have to do that if a car's in a collision, you know, and you pick the car up and you bring it to your shed, your storage area. The next day or two, most of the time, insurance adjusters are going to be in touch with you. Why would you need a title before you know if the adjuster is going to total the car or what's going to happen to the car? You know what, I mean, that's my dealing, say, once the adjuster looks at it and makes a decision whether it's totaled or not.
From a business and person, I don't mean to interrupt you, I'm sorry.
And if it is a total car, then they want it taken somewhere, you know, where they salvage the parts and all that. I mean, that's the way it's been. I've never had a bad wreck, but I know lots of family that have. So explain, why would you have to have a title right away anyway if the insurance companies come in and pick up their car?
There's definitely some incongruency with the law, but that is a state required, rule that you have to apply within 10 days. It has to do with informing a lien holder if there's a car being held that's being accruing $25 or $40 a day storage, whatever it is, so that the lien holder can be informed of it, so it doesn't get lost in the mix. And unfortunately, we do end up with a lot of cars that don't get picked up in time.
So even if the insurance company comes there and looks at the vehicle, you still have to do that?
I do not, but by law, yes, sir, you do.
Huh.
And I leave myself out, I kind of hang myself out to dry with that.
Right.
There's only so much of the storage you can charge if you don't do things by the law.
Gotcha.
So I do it for the right reasons, but unfortunately it ends up.
Thanks for explaining it, because I didn't understand. I've had people complain about that, and I said, well, I don't know what.
Right.
Until you just told me what you did, I didn't know either.
And of course.
It sounded like a ripoff.
Absolutely, absolutely. And 1 day is too fast. I mean, I think that's obvious to everybody. 5 days is kind of quick too, but unfortunately this is state law. I mean, it's,
So once it's entered in the computer, it's done? Or you have to receive notification back from them? I mean, is it just a program that you go on and plug it in with the VIN number and stuff?
I wish it were that easy. No, we hire a company, they come by and physically look at the vehicle and get the physical VIN number off the car to, reduce clerical errors and everything else moving forward.
So on this administrative fee, after 5 days, when you apply for it, and it's a total, do you charge that to the insurance company?
Yes, that would, I mean, generally, yes.
Whoever wants
this car would have to pay that fee, yes.
So you're saying that you're mandated to do this, and you're saying this is only a pass-through cost. You're not profiting off the 300.
Right.
When we wrote this, when we discussed this, it was $250, but he's gone up to 300 since then. The company I use, and I'm sure they're all kind of the same in my experience.
Can I help you with this?
Certainly.
I'm Sammy. I own Gearheads Garage, and I've been on the rotation, Bluffton PD rotation, a little bit over a year now. The way it works is once you tow a vehicle into your impound yard through a Bluffton PD rotation call, you have 5 days to find out the legal owner of the vehicle or if there's a lien holder on the vehicle. And within that 5 days, we need to find that information out, and then we need to send certified letters to those two companies and the individuals saying that where the vehicle is at, how much the charge is so far to that day, so we can continue charging storage. Because if we don't send the certified letters to the lien holder or the legal owner of the vehicle, we cannot continue charging storage fees. Now, Philip might not be on top of it, but if it comes to show and the legal owner decides to pick up the vehicle from you, and then you try to charge 10-day storage fee, and they said, hey, I didn't get a certified letter, so you cannot really push that storage fee. That being said, you have to give them 30 days. Hey, this is the fees. You need to come and pick it up, and this is what storage fees are occurring per day. After 30 days, what we do is we send a TR2 form, which is a abandoned South Carolina DMV form, and then after that, we can continue with the title process. So this is a long-taking process. If the vehicle is registered in Georgia, you gotta send this company that we hire send certified letters to Georgia DMV. I had one that it was in Texas DMV and took about 8 months, and the car sat in the impound lot without getting paid. And at the end, we ended up, got the title, and then we scrapped it. So that's what that fee covers, basically.
Thank you. That's clarity to a lot of us we didn't know.
How do these fees compare to just if a private citizen had to have their car towed?
A little bit higher, but for the private citizen tow, we're not required to have millions of dollars worth of insurance, liability coverage, and everything else. So a touch higher, but really not. I mean, my minimum tow these days is $125. Something else I was looking at here.
I've got one more thing, and I don't see this being addressed here, but I'd brought it up numerous times. I get a lot of complaints from people saying that if you don't have cash, you can't get your car. And in this modern day that we're living in now, you can tap, you can swipe, you can Venmo or whatever. So I had brought it up to, I don't see anything pertaining to that on here, to make it a requirement that you guys have have a way that people can pay with a modern way, instead of demanding, if it's late in the day and they can't get that much cash to come and get their car out, and then it's another $40-50 tomorrow. Yeah. So I don't know how it's worded or if it's worded, but.
Mayor, I'll tell you that has been added. Felicia added that. That's part of this amendment.
It's not on.
It's not on the screen, no.
Okay.
I would like to say that usually people are fairly upset if they got arrested for whatever reason. And so in the past, you're always able to stop payment on a credit card. So what we do is you can either pay with a debit card or with cash. So I do give that option. But once you put that PIN in, it's harder to just arbitrarily stop payment on it. Right? So it's a kind of a protection so that we get paid for what we do.
But there are,
and to be clear,
I've had numerous people. This day we're living in now, we have to. I mean, I'm a business owner. Sure. I don't like paying those fees to the credit card companies any more than anybody else, but we have to live in the day that we are living in. So we have to move along with technology and offer more methods to take that pain away a little bit.
On the rest of, I can't speak for Sammy, but on the rest of my business, we certainly take credit cards.
We do, I do too. We didn't talk about the rest of the owners when we met all together with the chief and everything. So that was something that never discussed. I do accept credit cards, check, cash, I prefer them to pay with a credit card, to be honest with you. Now the banks are charging you cash only fees.
I know. I pay the same thing, but I just wanted to make sure that as we make these other amendments, that everyone understands that that's a requirement. And if somebody comes to town and says, they wouldn't let me get my car because I didn't have $500 in cash, or whatever the number may be, then that's going to be a problem with your business in the town.
We can definitely put in the ordinances.
It is in there.
Is it? Okay.
Anything from anybody else?
I have something.
Go ahead, Daniel.
I don't know, I don't know if you know where this is in the ordinance. Page 34, paragraph G. And it mentions, further, the company must conduct adequate background checks on all personnel and operators, as criminal history of owner, operator, or other personnel may disqualify a towing wrecker service company from inclusion on the Bluffton Police Department rotation list. And we went through this with food trucks years ago. I like to tell the story that the young man that came to town hall that night was with his father. He'd had a criminal record. He was trying to figure out how to make a living, and his dad said he gave him the food truck, or helped him finance the food truck. But we were going to make sure that he couldn't do it based on if he had a criminal record. And that didn't sit well with me and council at that time, and so we challenged that, and we did away with that. I don't want to start targeting specific industries unless it's a pedophile or something along those lines. But I don't want to keep anybody from trying to make a living that's paid their dues 10 or 15 years ago, for example. It's just not fair.
I totally agree with you. I got my dealership license, so I'm bonded, and every year I go through a background check through the South Carolina DMV. So, but I totally agree with you. I don't think anybody should be forced not to be able to make a living because of their past. Everybody should deserve a second chance. Totally, 100% on that one.
I'm fine with that too, if whatever we need to do to.
So is it the council's recommendation to have that removed?
You just remove section G, correct?
Just remove that section and you're fine.
Does that go with everybody up here? Do we need to vote on that or
No, I'm
anything?
good with that.
Mr. Hamilton, are you okay with the gate fee? You were, I don't think you answered your questions. I wasn't sure, you were reading the sign, it was $25 per storage.
Yeah.
It was not, there was no gate fees on the original ordinance address at all?
You said there was no gate fee?
There was no gate fees in the original ordinance, yes. When you look at this, and I think you misread the $25.
I misread it
Yep.
because it looked like.
It looked like $25 for the gate fee and increased to $75, yes.
Right.
That was the storage fees.
Storage fees increased from $25 to $40.
And we would love you to help us with this issue.
Okay, if we're looking at the same thing, it says storage per day, first 24 hours, $25 gate fee for customer request pickup after normal business hours, $75.
It looks like a line is missing because the comparing line was supposed to be police impound requests. It's now 125. So it looks like it should have been, what's a proposed fee for police impound, because storage is 25 and should be 40 right now. So what's the request for the new impound fee, Chief? If you see, it's 125. Right there, it goes from police impound request 125 straight to storage per day after first 24 hours 40.
Well, the 125 is to pick the car up and bring it there.
No, it's
And then
saying
it's $40 a day storage.
right. I was saying with
Chart is not
right
right.
with the confusion, the chart is off. I'm asking, is there we have current fees for all the ones on the left. The right side is supposed to show the new fee. So you can't go from 125 to 40. Right. Because that's the only decrease. So I'm asking, is it
So what was storage before?
It's $25 a day, and it starts after 24 hours.
It says just down here. The gate fee, there was no gate fee before, right?
That's correct. The order doesn't address the gate fee or admin fee.
So the storage per day is going from 25 to 40 is what you're asking
Yes.
for.
If you like, we are to get a little bit more, but we are okay with the $40. You know how much the land costs in Bluffton, town of Bluffton?
All right, and if somebody comes to pick up their car after hours, it's an additional $75,
Correct. Or the weekends,
or it can be if y'all want to have them.
if you guys approve it, yes.
So with the chart, we understand the storage, is the request to keep the police impound cost at 125? Or is that supposed to be an upcharge as well?
No, ma'am. Basically, we just want every tow that comes through the rotation to be the 200, unless it's an accident, which it can be more than that because that requires special equipment and everything else.
So the impound request would be 200 as well. It just doesn't show that. I see
Right,
what you're
that's,
saying.
yeah, that's not, that chart was off. So that should be corrected.
So all tows basically go from 125 to 200 unless they're, unless it's, unless it's an accident.
Collision, yes, involved. That's the $300.
Yeah, it's 300.
What we are trying to do with the help of the chief is we simplify the ordinance, because right now the ordinance, the way it's written, or it was written.
Clear as mud.
Yeah, as you say, Mr. Chair, it's like business hours, you charge $100, non-business hours is $200, and it's not, the hours are not really lined up, it's very complicated, and that made us unintentionally make mistakes.
Kind of like calling an HVAC or a plumber. They're gonna charge you $100 to show up at your house, and then they do the diagnostics to say, oh, it's this much more.
Okay, so this is first reading. I think there's a few things that
We clarify, we can get that clarified between first and second to make sure the chart is reflective of,
Well, you can just
line up
Any more
better.
questions from you?
ignore the current fee description. We're looking at.
So everything on the left-hand side, you can
Forget that.
pretty much ignore. I just wanted to show you guys a comparison of what we currently charge to what the new asking charge is. So anything on the left is just where we're at right now.
If there's a motion to approve on first reading, you need to, your motion needs to include remove G regarding criminal records.
Yeah, and I want to see the requirement too for the.
Yes, sir.
The wording. I don't need to see it now, but between now and then.
I'll put it up on the slide for you, yes, sir.
I would like to make a motion to approve on first reading, but as a work in progress.
Thank you very much.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those approve? Everyone? In favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much, Councilman, we appreciate it.
So when it comes back next month, then we can.
Be here if you have any additional questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, guys. Okay, next up is consideration of accommodations tax advisory committee funding recommendations for quarter ending December 31st. Ms. Natalie, Finance Director.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and congratulations. Okay, we have the quarterly.
Let's do them one at a time.
Okay. I've got them set up that way in the presentation. So I just wanted to give a little bit of background on the meeting that we had in February. We presented a rough draft of what we're looking at proposing for the fiscal year 25 budget to include local accommodations tax. So currently we're looking at transferring in $204,203 to the general fund, which will support police services, things like events, and then also the Welcome Center. Additionally, we included information on Act 57 that Kevin spoke about. We included both the local accommodations tax, which we are estimating to be $235,209, to go into the general fund to support the Neighborhood Assistance Program and the Regional Housing Trust Fund. And then on the state side, which will take a little bit more additional steps that Kevin discussed. On the state accommodations tax side, we're estimating $149,641 for the affordable housing project in CIP. That act sunsets on December 31st, 2030, and it's not to be used as for housing costs such as rent, mortgage, utilities, those sorts of things. Additionally, on the local side, we're proposing $1,204,127 to support 5 projects in the CIP displayed here. Again, this is the proposal. This has not been adopted or anything. This will come before town council for first reading in May with the fiscal year 25 budget. Okay, now on to the applications. We had 4 applicants this quarter. The total request was $115,341. ATAC is recommending a total of $108,250, and I'll go into those individually now, after this. Sorry. Currently, we have $297,681 available for distribution. Revenues for this quarter are around 8% higher than they were last year quarter the same time. And this just shows the applicants, their scores, and if the total award, which is recommended at $108,250, then that would leave the available at just shy of $190,000 to go into the next quarter. Okay, now into the applicants. So the first one is the Hilton Head Island Bluffton Chamber of Commerce. They are requesting $45,000 in support of the official Bluffton vacation planner. This request is a supplemental request aside from their DMO portion, which is paid out of the state at 30%. At the time when they had presented the budget to town council, it had included the 8% of the local, which was not approved in 24. So this is why they're coming before council for the supplemental request.
Just to clarify, when they got the 8%, we still funded the book, the Bluffton vacation planner. I couldn't remember getting that out. Correct.
Official vacation planner, yes.
Bridget, you want to start? Any questions for Natalie? Dan?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hamilton?
Come back to me.
I don't have any questions.
Come back to me. Explain, again, it seems like the 8% is what we tried to avoid paying before, right?
Out of the local, yes. At that time, we had designated 30% from the state, which is part of state law. And then the town had designated 8% of the local accommodations tax funds. But in fiscal year 24, that 8% was not budgeted for the DMO.
Okay, and the reason, because Dan made this point strong the last time, calling tonight, but we were trying to figure out how to use that 8% locally and I think Lisa also made this point as well. We were trying to make this, figure out how we could use it for the town of Bluffton, because we had that option. So why are we giving them the total 8% and not trying again when we said no the first time?
We're not giving them that.
Yeah, that's not 8%.
Said this.
They don't get the 8% anymore.
No, it just said if we didn't budget 8%, they're not getting 8%.
Right, and that was out of the local ATAX, and so this is now, the request is gonna be out of the state ATAX.
Okay, got it, sorry.
And this 45,000 request is for the vacation planner, the book that they put together once a year.
Yes.
Is there a motion to, the Lord, where do we have motions written anywhere or just?
Yeah, she has it up.
Mayor, I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
It's got to be read, I think. But I make a motion to grant Hilton Head Island Bluffton Chamber of Commerce $45,000 in support of the 2024 official Bluffton Vacation Planner as presented in the staff report breakdown for advertising and promotion of tourism expenses.
Any conversation, comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously.
The next application is for the Gullah Traveling Theater. This came before ATAC in the prior quarter. ATAC had recommended that they come back when they had a 2024 schedule solidified, in which they have and have come back to request funding. Their request was for $26,841. When reviewing the budget, ATAC found that $9,750 of the budget were eligible for support, and so that is their recommendation.
Any discussion, any questions? Dan?
Yes, sir.
Somebody want to make a motion?
May I have, can I ask you a question?
Oh, sure.
Sorry, I've been so quiet, but just for clarification purposes,
Let me go back to the slide.
Thank you. The 48,000 of ineligible expenses, can you go into any of that?
So some ineligible expenses are, if you have somebody coming in, like operational expenses, or if you pay yourself as, salaries, those types of things. The purpose of accommodations tax funds are to support visitors that come to an event or a festival. And so in order to grab those tourists and to have them enjoy the festival, ATAX will support additional restrooms, advertising to grab those people to come in to visit Bluffton. So like tourist transportation is one, because you need to have shuttles if you have visitors that need to go back and forth to different places. I'm trying to think of some that wouldn't be eligible, and I'm blanking, I apologize.
I don't mind helping Natalie if you.
Oh, thank you.
So if Emily, like in their budget, they wanted to pay for entertainment, or they wanted to pay for a caterer, or they wanted to pay for T-shirts, things like that can't be included. It has to be things that would be needed to put the event on. So like the stage, or the restrooms, if they had to bring in additional restrooms, or the security. Well, now we pay for that, the police department, but things like that, or trolley service is what they're limited to.
Yes, exactly. Some of the things were meals, administration expenses, those types of things that don't qualify.
Thank you.
I was
Thank
just
you,
gonna
Councilman Frazier.
say, if you look on page 75, there's actually a breakdown of their budget request, and about 42,000 was for salaries and paying people to perform and stuff, and that would be, like she said, the non-eligible expenses specifically for theirs.
Yes, thank you.
Anybody want to make a motion?
I make a motion to grant Gullah Traveling Theater, Inc. $9,750 in support of the Gullah Kinfolk Come to Bluffton performances as presented in the staff report breakdown for advertising and promotion of tourism and facilities for civic and cultural events expenses.
I second that.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous.
Okay, and our third applicant is an annual request from Old Town Bluffton Merchant Society. This is for the 2024 Bluffton as a destination. It is all for advertising, and they are requesting $28,500, which the committee is recommending.
Questions? Bridget? Dano? Greta? Emily?
Emilio.
And I have no questions.
Okay.
Somebody
Make
like
a
to make a
motion to
motion?
grant the Old Town Bluffton Merchant Society $28,500 in support of the 2024 Bluffton as Destination Project as presented in the staff report breakdown for advertising and promotion of tourism expenses.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
Okay, and our final applicant is the Rotary Club of Bluffton. This is for the 2024 Mayfest. They requested $15,000. After review of their budget, ATAC is recommending an additional $10,000 for a total of an award of $25,000.
For the record, Dan Woods recused on this item, I guess.
Okay. I've never seen ATEX give more money than they asked for. Why are you doing that this time?
Oh, Sam's here. I'm sorry.
Don't argue with Sam.
I apologize.
We need Sam.
My apologies. Council, how are y'all?
Good, how are you?
Congratulations. Congratulations. So this applicant, who really does know better, for whatever reasons, left off the municipality and tourist transportation costs. Mostly, she says, because it's too hard to deal with, but we won't give them the money unless they actually garner the expense. Forgive me, those two expenses are based upon tourism numbers. So while we've awarded the ability for them to request the 5,000, if they have 100% tourism, which they never do, they would be eligible for the costs they're generated based upon tourism. But the problem that this applicant usually has is determining how many tourists based upon the criteria that our ATAX committee in town have set forth. So she just left it off. They're eligible for it. You guys probably remember that last year, most of our applicants knew that they couldn't exceed 50% of their whole budget. So we removed the advertising cost as a line item for that, against that 50%. So the net result was that she was eligible for those expenses. They are definitely related to the event. And in that case, y'all, as you guys who've been there know, parking is miserable. They've got to take a shuttle from somewhere. So we included those costs as they would become eligible for based upon the amount of tourism.
Sam, I think I can appreciate that, but we have to be consistent. You can't do it for one if you don't do it for the others. You can't recommend or suggest if they don't ask for it. So over the board, let's be consistent so someone else don't say you did it for John, but you didn't do it for Mary. Okay? Let's be consistent. I'm going to make a recommendation that we award this extra $10,000, but I don't think we should be doing that.
With all due respect, I believe we're pretty consistent on letting people know what it takes to do the applicants. For a great example was the Bluffton traveling tour. We, as a committee, when they first came, said, meet with staff, find out what you're eligible for, find out how to do the applications. We often look at somebody and go, you know, you can, that number's different. So we do try to help our applicants through the process, because while we look at it as a committee often, they're sometimes a one-time shot. They don't understand the process and what is eligible, especially with the changing rules over the past year and a half or so. So we would always be, as a matter of fact, you may remember, Mr. Hamilton, that I don't remember which, a few years ago, we made an additional award for some applicant, Bay River Theater, because they didn't realize that we could fund it's not a copyright, but the thing where you can put the play on.
Royalties.
Yeah, the royalty for the play. So we said, come back and make an addendum to it, which the real answer was it would have been easier to say, what's those costs? Let's add them in now. So we're pretty, we're very consistent on when it does apply, but sometimes it's easier to do it now. Just like you guys remember, we used to make people come every quarter for an annual award. Not reward, but award. So we did that on an annual basis, so they didn't have to every quarter come before us to ask for the next payment due. And you guys, I think you all appreciate that opportunity too. So we don't have to do that all the time. But it's well taken, and we'll discuss that amongst ourselves in our next meeting.
Yeah, and trust me, please don't take this as if I'm trying to recommend you. I'm not doing that at all. I just don't want John to come back Mary to come back and say, look what you did for John, and didn't, and my application could have had the same error that I didn't do it, but it didn't happen. And I'm gonna make it even more clearer. The Bluffton Rotary Club is well known, and they do some great things. So some could easily look at that and say, they're getting favoritism, okay? All right.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a motion.
I make a motion that we grant the Bluffton Rotary Club of Bluffton $25,000 in support of their May River 2024 May River Fest weekend in the Bluffton project as presented in the staff report breakdown for advertising and promotion of tourism, municipality services, and tourism transportation.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 3, consideration of an ordinance for certain amendments to the Town of Bluffton Code of Ordinance, Chapter 23, Unified Development Ordinance, including amendments to Article 3, Application Process, Section 3.13, Development Surety and Stormwater Surety, Section 3.14, Certificate of Construction of Compliance, Section 3.18, Certificate of Appropriateness Historic District, Section 319, Site Feature Historic District Permit, and Section 3.25, Designation of Contributing Resources, Article 4, Zoning Districts, Table 4.3, Article 5, Design Standards, Section 5.10, Stormwater, 5.111, Parking, and Section 5.15, Old Town Bluffton Historic District, and Article 9, Definitions, Interpretations, Section 9.2, Defined Terms. Kevin. It seems like a whole.
I think I take the record, right, for longest description.
No wonder, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Salka left.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council, again. Yes, that was a lot of items that we have related to our Unified Development Ordinance that we're bringing through this evening. And just as a recap, the majority of the items that you're hearing this evening have actually come in front of you at a first reading. This was back in September, July of last year. We brought this forward. So in front of you right now is, obviously this is based upon our strategic plan and our quality of life focus area. The majority of these edits that they go through, we did if you remember back in January of 23, we had that joint meeting with the Planning Commission and gave us a list of different items for us to work through. From there, we brought them in front of the Historic Preservation Commission for items specifically in the historic district to get input, not necessarily recommendations from them. From there, we had multiple meetings with the Planning Commission to break it apart, so that way we could scrub all of these items in greater detail, which is why we used 4 meetings to go through all that. And then we brought them all back together for you at a first reading in July. There were some questions on some of the items, which we then took that portion out, which is what we're going to go through this evening. We approved the other portion of it. The items that you had questions about, we brought it back in front of the Historic Preservation Commission this past January, and then again in January for Planning Commission. And we had a few items that were added to it, and I'm going to go over it here in a second to the February Planning Commission meeting. So again, I'm keeping this very high level. There was almost 30 some odd pages of edits that were provided in the staff report. Hopefully I've met with 2 of you individually. You had a lot of great questions that we were able to answer. Happy to dig deeper in case you want to, but I'll just keep this very high level as we go through this, and feel free to stop if you have questions. Specifically, the first item is dealing with development and stormwater sureties. What this is more of a Scribner's item where we added, or we broke apart the difference between a development surety and a stormwater surety and those requirements. The next one was dealing with construction compliance. And This is an item that we had an issue where I brought code in front of you last year thinking that we were being more efficient in what we were doing, realized that what happens is that without this temporary construction compliance, commercial developments could not move forward and receive or get a building permit issue to start construction. So we would allow for horizontal construction, but we wouldn't allow them to move forward with vertical construction without them providing a bond for 75% of the cost of their improvements. Now, when you're doing a large commercial site, that could be anywhere from $1 million to $3 million. Once we were working with some applicants that were going through the process, and they showed us that our error, and I wanted to facilitate this as quick as possible, bring this back forward, so that way we can make these changes. Because ultimately, a commercial project, that certificate of occupancy is the final item that we have. So we're making sure that they're getting all their improvements, their parking lot, their stormwater, their landscaping, all in place while they're finishing up the building before they can start operation. What we were doing was it was an undue hardship on individuals to get a letter of credit or a bond for millions of dollars when it wasn't necessary. So we realized that there was error, and we brought that in front of Planning Commission back in February, and that's why it's here on a first reading with you in March. A couple other items was dealing with stormwater. We provided some clarification. Our current stormwater requirements refer to a disturbance of 5,000 acres for new development and redevelopment. We realized specifically if we have redevelopment that we would change that threshold to 2,000 square foot. That gives the ability for an individual to get an affidavit stating that, like, listen, I'm adding a patio to my back of the house, and it's not going to cause major concerns through the stormwater. Some of the other items that we had, and these were previously brought in front of you as that first reading, but they were then pulled. Specifically was for the compact spaces. So this item is applicable to the historic district and non-historic district. And the goal is that to reduce the percentage of compact car spaces that could be allowed, as well as eliminating the ability to use golf cart, interchangeable between compact and golf cart parking spaces. That's not to say that you can't have golf cart parking spaces. It's just that you can't use those to meet your parking requirements. So that was items 1 and 4 that are up there. Items 2 and 3 are not applicable to the historic district. And what we were having is we had a provision in the code that says that anyone within 500 feet of a public parking facility could use that to meet their required parking. So it was not applicable to any of the projects that we've been going through, so we realized we just needed to eliminate that. And also more of a clerical item was changing the maximum to minimum in the number of parking spaces. Yes, sir.
Just before, eliminate the ability to use public parking facilities within 500 feet from counting towards required parking. So they can use none now on-street parking or anything to get?
What this is saying is for a...
Maybe not in the historic district. I'm just thinking moving on out Bluffton Road, so to speak. You know, out that way. Can any of the on-street parking be used there if it's not out of the historic district, or?
So typically, we have no on-street parking spaces. There's maybe like a few parcels along May River Road that this would apply to. But the majority of on-street parking is located in the historic district. So we have provisions that allow you to use that to meet towards your parking requirements. What this does is, because this is in a portion of the Unified Development Ordinance that is not associated with the historic district, this provision doesn't apply to anything in the historic district. This applies outside of the historic district, and what would happen is if we had a public parking facility, not necessarily on-street parking, but a commercial development, if they were within that area, they could use that to meet their parking requirements. I think there was an intention to it when it was first created, But, you know, as of today, it doesn't, we don't have any parking facilities outside of the historic district that I'm fully aware of. The closest one, I mean,
You got
somewhere on
one,
Bluffton
you got
Road.
one right there by, Pomona State Bank, where we were the other day.
Yeah, and that's in the historic, so that's in the historic
No, it
district.
isn't. Not that side of the road, right?
Yes. Yes. You're
My
not,
business is not,
you're not, but the parking lot is. Yes,
really.
yes.
So how far does it go that way?
The parking lot, so the parking lot, and then the adjacent vacant lot that we're standing in, that is in the historic district.
It stops right there.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's an odd shape.
yes,
Yeah. You're in, you're out,
yes,
and you're back in.
yes. It is confusing. Okay. And then also some other items, more of just clarifications on increasing angles of parking spaces. And we had a diagram that was provided in the staff report that clearly explained that. The next item is to include storefront manufacturing, specifically in the neighborhood general historic district. If you remember a couple of years ago, we brought this use in front of you. The goal was to allow for small scale manufacturing businesses. An example would be like if you do leathering and you get large pieces of leather come in, you cut them up, you create, you have like small pieces of something and you're adding it to it. You're you're manufacturing a product. There's no outside storage, there's no smells, there's no noises, there's nothing that's going to impact property owners adjacent to you. We added that to the neighborhood core and neighborhood center historic districts. So what we realized is that this use it was also appropriate and should have been included in that neighborhood general historic district. We do have quite a bit of properties along Bruin, May River Road that would benefit from allowing this use in there. Now, there are also properties that are on some of the side streets throughout Bluffton that this could happen as well. But again, these type of uses are completely enclosed in a building. There's no loud noises, there's no fumes, there's no dust. All these things are not allowed to have, which we would pick that up during the development process to make sure if they're trying to use a use that is not consistent with that. Another great example is we have if you were making popsicles and all of your work is inside, you're manufacturing, you're creating, this product, final product, you're not going to notice that on the outside. So that would be another example of a use that could go into a building completely enclosed and not impact adjacent property owners. Other items, the majority of these were items that were previously brought in front of you. I'll just go through these relatively quickly. Number one was the process for relocation of buildings, both contributing resources as well as non-contributing resources. And that's just because we did not have a process in place as to facilitate if someone was interested in relocating a structure. The other one is clarifying to make sure that prior to receiving a certificate of appropriateness in the historic district, that your development plan is required to be approved. We distinguish between sheds and garden structures. We increased front build-to lines in the neighborhood, that's the center and the neighborhood core districts from 5 to 10 feet. Increased side setbacks from 5 to 8. And then we added a medium house type. We were having problems where we had a lot of architects that were coming in with designs of houses that didn't necessarily fit one of the building types that we had, and we were kind of pushing it off into our additional building type. So we added this medium housing type, and it follows the parameters of the additional building type, but gives clarification to architects as they're moving through the process.
Kevin, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Going back up to item number 1, we rarely have seen if anyone ever use that particular UDO option in terms of like relocating a contributing structure from one property and allowing someone else to put it elsewhere. Because our current contributing structures are on like an arbitrary list, like we only have 3 structures, I believe, that are on the historic National Registry list. Our historic district we created. In understanding the process, I'm trying to like think of, do we necessarily have to have it where they can only relocate those buildings that are technically not really historic within that district? Because it seems like that creates constraints that we don't really have the space if someone has a structure right now on their property, like let's say the one that was on Bruin, for instance, and it's not, or the one that on the corner of Wharf, it's really not historic. But if someone was like, yeah, I'll take that structure and I wanted to move it to Goethe or Buck Island, why do we not have allowances that would make that more practical in sense of forcing it to happen within our current limits where really there'd be no space to do that?
The problem is we didn't have anything specifically in place for someone that wanted to do a relocation. So we didn't have a process. And that's what we're doing here is we're adding the criteria, we're explaining how it needs to be done. Obviously, our ultimate goal is always for a contributing structure is to stay where it is, and then make improvements at its current location because of, once you start moving structures, you potentially lose the integrity of both the structure as well as the historical context of where that structure is located.
But because we had this workshop at Strategic, we know that that's not necessarily the case in the sense of we've designated and we made our own structures historic that technically are at our discretion that really don't have that designation. So not, looking at ones like the Garvin Garvey or ones that are like the Lockwood, but ones that are on that list that probably should have never been there. I'm just thinking of, it doesn't make sense to have a UDO process for something we'd never really go through, or that would be more restrictive and not really something that's gonna be conducive to help an owner of a structure that shouldn't be historic to be able to move it somewhere that would actually, they could apply this process. Currently as is, would we even be able to apply this process to one of those structures in our current district if we needed to?
I might need you to rephrase the
What I'm
question.
saying is like, it doesn't make sense to make policies that we essentially can't implement. Like if someone has one of those contributing structures that are not contributing, like where are they gonna move it? In Old Town Bluffton, like there's no space to say that you have to keep it in a historic district, but we don't really have space to do that. If a person wanted that option.
Well, that's part of it. So it could be, there are parcels out there. We have quite a few undeveloped areas of land or throughout the town that potentially could happen. The issue is that we have no provisions in place to tell someone how they could even remotely go about doing that. So what we're trying to do, and there's different levels of criteria based off of if it is a contributing structure or if it's a non-contributing structure. So you still have to follow that. Also, the provisions in here state that while you may receive a certificate of appropriateness to have the ability to move it, you now have to get another certificate of appropriateness to show where you're going to move it to if it's in the historic district. So you can get approval to move it, but you have to show where it's going to go. And with that, you have to have a development plan to show how it's going to be placed, all the infrastructure, all of that's going to be in there. We've never had any provisions to clearly outline. So that way, when someone comes in, we're not just making this up. We're following the code, and our code tells us to do this.
I get that. It all makes sense. I'm just saying, I remember now going back to the Joyner property. That was one of the conditions that HPC allowed the owner at that time to do. And I remember folks trying to figure out, well, if he's willing to allow someone to inherit that structure, where's it gonna go? And there was no offer or no one to even do that because it's like, where are they gonna put it? I'm just saying, like, I understand the process. I just think like we should include things, if we're gonna make amendments that we can actually go back and use and not just build in a process that ultimately is gonna be more restrictive in nature than it is gonna help us and help an owner of a particular structure actually come up to some type of solution.
Okay, I'm happy, like, we can talk offline, so that way, I can have all of my staff in there, so that way we're working through that. If that's something that, if there's any, like, potential minor adjustments to this language, that we could pick up during second reading, definitely happy to do that.
Yeah, I think too, and I get what you're saying. I mean, I think the Joyner was an example. The site that you're on nobody knew how to follow the rules, I think. And staff was confused on that issue as well as the property owners. So I get the clarity of this, but also I know there's not a lot of sites left in the area that this pertains to, but it doesn't mean that some existing structures may not want to move even on their own property to better utilize their property. That was part of what happened with the Joyner property. It made the property more accessible and valuable by relocating that structure instead of saying it had to stay where it was. So I still think there's a possibility of some of these things popping up. Like, I don't even know, like Kiki, I don't know how big her lot is or anything, but it may be that she might go, I need to move this over to here because I've got somebody wanting to do something with me. You know, so I see there's possibilities here to your point. I don't know how widespread, but I get what staff is trying to accomplish.
Any question for, I guess we're still in the middle of your presentation. So.
Oh, no worries, absolutely.
Let him go ahead and finish his presentation.
Okay, all right. Then we had numerous like minor reformatting items, just Scribner's items that were all outlined throughout the staff report and the attachments. The other items was just rewording some, this was from Planning Commission when they looked at this. Part of their amendments was dealing with that, the characteristics of the medium house type was just the statement that they wanted to make sure that they was clearly understood that this is larger than a cottage. We do have provisions right now for building type 4 cottage, so they wanted to make sure that that someone wasn't trying to make a larger cottage, but necessarily call it the medium house type. And then also dealing with vehicular openings is with the garages, that if you had if you were to have two garage doors side by side, that they could max out at the 10 feet as opposed to 12 feet on each one of them. And when you take that in consideration, a 2-car garage, if you have two 12-foot garage doors plus, you know, the portions along the side, you could be anywhere from 24 to 28 feet in width for parking for a garage. What this does is it reduces it down so that way it's only the 20 feet plus typically, you know, 2 to 3 feet on either side. So it just reduces the size of the garage doors.
What's the benefit of that? I mean, is it totally aesthetics?
Yes, it is. It's aesthetics.
The property's big enough for the square footage on the ground.
It's dealing with the form-based code, which a form-based code versus conventional zoning, it's just, it's different, but it's the aesthetics of the building. Those smaller garage doors, larger garage doors is more a suburban feel to it versus a compact design of what we're looking for in the Old Town.
Kevin, I don't know if I agree with that. Garages are also storage. So, you know, space, a 10-foot garage opening is just a car. Can't put a mop or broom in it. So I don't know if I agree with that.
Now, that's just the garage door itself. That's not necessarily the space inside the garage. So it's just the width of the garage door. Your building could be, you could be 20 feet wide of your building and you only have a 1-car garage door. And that, you know, that would be 12 feet. But if you had two, let's say your building was, you know, 30 feet wide, you'd be allowed those 2 garage doors that are at 10 feet each, and you'd still have extra building.
So you're trying to eliminate, if someone want to have a 3-car garage, then have to have 3 doors.
Well, in the historic district, you can only have 2 garage doors.
Did you buy another car?
I don't see that personally. That's getting too picky to me to tell somebody you gotta have a 10-foot door instead of a 12. If you drive a big truck, or maybe you're a big person, you need enough room to get by the side of the truck and through the door, and 10 foot, by the time you put an 8-foot something vehicle with big tires in it, you might can't even put your truck in there, with wide tires.
Let me ask.
So current code is 12.
Let's leave
So
it.
we can,
Leave it 12. Yeah, that's telling people too much.
Sure thing. I'll just make note of that, so that way at time of motion that, you would just not necessarily want to approve.
That's my opinion on whatever.
Or agree with the planning commission's amendment for that.
I have a
portion.
small truck. Dan and Larry have the big truck, so
I won't touch that. I want to get off this and move on, but just out of curiosity, I mean, I understand what we're trying to do. I understand the aesthetics that have been assigned to the Old Town area with the form-based code. I mean, the infill, everything we're doing. But where did this come from? I guess now that I'm thinking about it, where did this come from?
This came from a suggestion from the planning commission.
Yeah, it's a suggestion from the planning commission, and I'm happy to reach back with staff and talk with planning commissioners as to the logic behind that and bring it back.
But to go back to this, not that, I don't mean to be interrupting you, but so as far as staff, to Larry's point and Fred's point, as far as staff was concerned, you were fine until planning commission made a recommendation. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's why we've highlighted this as planning commission proposed amendments.
Okay, so I think their point is well made.
Okay. So that's kind of the highlight of the actual text amendment portion of it. We do have the review criteria. All of these amendments met the review criteria. Happy to go through them if you like. As for actions this evening, you can approve, this is the first reading, so this will come back in front of you again. You can approve the application as submitted, approve it with amendments, or to deny the request. From a next step standpoint, you can see here we're at first reading, and this would be the 2024 March 12th. And this will come back to you at the April 9th meeting for a final reading and public hearing. So from a motion standpoint, you could either approve as submitted, and then what we did was we did have the possible amendments from Planning Commission. So based on the discussion that we had, my recommendation would be approve with amendments, and then just reading number 1 and not number 2.
Before we move on this motion, one more question. Have we studied the house type, the medium house type? I know, Heather, we've been working with some situations and trying to make sense of some things. Is this going to accomplish what we need for some of the descriptions of what people want to do?
Not necessarily. That would be in the next set of amendments. That needs.
But this, in your opinion, this is needed for another situation that I just haven't been told.
Yes.
Okay.
Before we go on, one more item in here, Kevin, that's in the proposed amendment. I'm on page 150, item B, under contributing resources.
Is this under the relocation? I'm sorry, mine doesn't have the same number.
Under section 3.18.4, it's for relocation and for demolition, pretty much everything related to contributing structures, and some of the proposals to like amendments of it.
Yes.
So in the language of that, one concern that I had with it, Going back to something we discussed before, a lot of owners of contributing structures that are still residential do not have the financial means to go through some of the processes of restoring them. It is a very already labored bureaucratic process, and my concern is adding in more things in here, like one talks about the structural engineering report and like some other things which were already in consideration. How do we not add in more policies, I guess, that's gonna make it even more stringent in looking at some of those residential structures now that are falling apart, dilapidated, and adding more onto that just makes it even harder for people to really get in and make the improvements that they need if they fall in a category like a Kiki that doesn't have the financial means to do so. I want to make sure like we don't add in more things that make it even more difficult for an owner to make those changes.
Couple things. One, so this was dealing with process for relocation. So there's a lot of different, ways that you could go through somewhere. If someone was looking to come in to do renovations to a structure. So process-wise, if it's not changing the character of the property, then that's a site feature, which is $25 and going through and explaining what you're wanting to do and then getting a building permit to make those changes. Now, if you're looking to, you want to physically pick up this structure and move it and do all this, then you are going to have to provide some information. You're going to have to, even from a building code standpoint, they're going to need to see like, how are you going to do this? How is it going to look? When you make the changes to it, what is it going to look like? So yes, there will be costs associated with that.
And even physically, what is it involved?
Right.
Yes.
You have to know that.
Yes.
I guess that was my concern or recommendation. Thank you for that. We don't have language right now that speaks specifically to an average resident who does not have the financial means to abide by a process to restructure their contributing structure that had that designation. Is there a possibility to put some type of language or process in there that makes it more palpable for them to do that?
Well, I think part of it is we do have the grant program. So if an individual has a contributing resource, and I mean, we are constantly promoting this, obviously with funding moving forward. I think it's $30,000 for residential and $20,000 for commercial uses. So $30,000 goes a long way, and some of that funds could be for engineering costs. So, there are provisions in place that you could, and you can get it over multiple years. So an individual could spend $30,000 on getting plans in place as to what they want to do. And it's a reimbursement, aspect of it. In year one, and then in year two, use an additional $30,000 to help make some of those improvements. So I think we have provisions in place, and as people are coming through, and if you know of people, we're always happy to have them come in to be able to talk to them and explain the process and walk them through the whole thing. So there's a lot of different avenues of how someone would want to go about making changes, and we try to work as much as possible with them. But on these larger scale of what they're looking to do, then it does cost more. But if someone has a property, they want to maintain it, we have that grant program in place to help them to make those improvements to it.
Those numbers sound good, but $60,000 is a drop in the bucket.
I'm happy to add into my budget to increase those funds. I'm just going to have to look to Chris for that. So we can always update that amount.
Okay, so moving forward here, if we're ready to make a motion, then we should just mention skipping 2.
Yes.
Right? So somebody want to make a motion?
And sorry, if I could, just real quick, before you make the motion, we've heard all those comments and we can discuss and kind of look at legally to see if there's other options that we can put in the code, something like equivalent documents or something that we can do to address your concerns about those documents. But I don't have the answers right now, so I don't want to throw out some options that may not work. But we've heard those comments and we will address
You
them.
can put that together
Thank you,
when it
Adam.
comes for second reading. We can either like it or not and approve it or not and move on.
Some of the changes that Councilman Frazier would like to see, Kevin, you already invited her to come in for something else. Maybe put that in, when you go to see them, make sure you come back and let us know what we can do to help.
Yes, and that invitation is for anyone, all of you, members of the public, if you have questions about the amendments or ideas or different perspectives.
And grants possibly outside the city limits.
Right, other options for.
I think other options.
Opportunities.
May I make one more observation, Mayor? Sure. This was in the lengthy, hard work that Kevin had to do, but I know one thing that council's always been concerned about, and I know Bridget and I had a conversation about this earlier, but so in Bluffton, contributing resource is 50 years or older. And my understanding is, and I'm trying to make sure I understand this correctly so all of council can hear it, is the fact that in order to become a bona fide contributing resource, once it crosses over, let's say year 51, the property owner has to sign off and agree to that documentation to meet the town criteria of a contributing resource. Is that correct?
Yes, it's the 50 years plus, and there's like four different criteria that you could fall under. A historical, person, place, or thing, and there's a few other criteria, and I just off the top of my head just can't remember. But you then become eligible, and if you guys remember, we brought forward the Jenny Kitty building and then the post office. So those two buildings, from the architectural standpoint, they had significance from a historical component to it. And that's one of the reasons why we were able to bring those forward. They became eligible, and then ultimately you as town council say, yes, that is a contributing structure to our local district.
That's not my question. My question is, if my house hits 51 years and the town deems it a contributing resource, and we appointed that, and it makes our list in the historical district, but I have not signed anything saying that I obligate this to be a historical resource, does that happen? I know that we've had this discussion in the past, and some people were going, well, I never signed anything when when we did our 1986? Yeah. The list of all contributing structures. And I'm not trying to take away from the historic value of the community or the town.
But we had talked about that, and we were going to change that so that those people were actually notified. Heather, I know you've got all the information.
Any future changes, yes, 100% is notifications with the property owners. Typically, it's with the property owners, and what I'd like to do is talk with Terry to make sure from a legal standpoint is if someone were to say, no,
right,
I do not want that to be the case.
Then there's no. If someone says no, it's no.
They ought to have the right to deny
Yeah.
participating in, all it does is.
Well, I would suggest that Kevin, his staff, and our office try to come back with a logical procedure on that.
Logical procedure, if they say no, it's no.
Well, what if someone is a contributing structure now, or contributing resource now, it gets sold to John Doe, and John Doe says, I don't want to be anymore. So I think we need to think it through. That's all I'm suggesting, is we think it through.
John Doe bought a contributing structure.
Right.
We're talking about the ones that
You're talking about John
every
Doe.
year we're turning into, more and more will turn into.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
John Doe is different because he bought a contributing structure.
Well, and
somebody have a property now that's 50 years old, and the town says, we want that to be a contributing structure, and the owner says, no, I don't want it on the list, I don't want to be on that list.
Well, the question is do you want council to be handcuffed if there is a valid reason and a legitimate reason to have something named as a contributing resource? Do you want to have the ability to do it or not, whether he consents or not? And that's for council to decide.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to force anyone into that category if they don't want to be.
Right. And especially not with us having to put up financial incentives to assist them, because that takes that person from now being able to make a change to their exterior by just going through a permitting process to now they have to go through HPC, they have to go through, different entities, and it's going to become more costly. And I don't think we should be creating financial burdens for people where we don't need to.
And it definitely creates a financial burden to the owner when it becomes on that list. So things that are 50 years old, today's modern technology, whether it's insulation, wiring, windows, the whole thing, homes are a lot more efficient nowadays being built than they are 10 years ago or 20 years, much less 50. So to put that burden on someone saying that you can't totally change this house, whether it be windows, and if it's a contributing structure, you can't take the wooden windows out and put metal ones in, right?
You can.
I mean, that's a bunch of.
You can do that.
Permission to get to your own
Yes,
window.
so we have provisions in place, and I think that you guys have a bigger item that needs to be addressed, and I think that before we go down that rabbit hole, that's something that, working with legal, we can come with some language, and then that way we're not muddying the text amendments that are going through right now with a different project.
Kevin, is anything in the proposed amendment on section 3.25, designation of contributing resources? Is there anything in these edits that you've put forth today that would handcuff council from this concept that they've just talked about?
I'm not aware of that, no.
I don't believe so either, but would you prefer that if they move forward and approve these amendments, that we delete section 3.25 changes and bring it back to them at a different time?
I don't. I think it's appropriate to continue to move forward. I think that
very good.
There are probably, it's a domino effect. Once we start focusing on something, if we take this out, then we would need to rethink everything at that point.
Well, it sounded to me like what I heard from council was council will get with staff, because there may be something that I'm missing here, but I think we need to have the dialogue and maybe a workshop down the road somewhere to say, okay, council, if this is the direction you want to go, this is what could happen.
Yes.
And then if we still choose to do that, so be it.
Yes.
Okay.
I agree.
And I would add in there that it does reference the applications manual, so that maybe those specifics of who can make the request and how that moves forward can be addressed in the applications manual and how that would move forward. So I agree with Kevin. I don't think this section would affect that.
One last point I want to make. Sir. Everything that's 50 years old doesn't make it a contributing structure to me. Just because it has the age, it doesn't have the characteristic.
Correct.
All right.
Well, I am now a contributing structure. I've been a contributing structure.
You can't change the rules on him. He's way grandfathered in. Okay.
What I'm hearing council say is that if a building goes over 50 years old, it will not become a contributing structure unless the owner consents.
That's the way I feel about it.
Okay.
That's what I feel about it.
We'll work on that.
Yeah, that's something we can work on, clarify, and also research our current code just to make sure, because if it's, and I just off the top of my head, I don't know if that's already in there, we might be fine with it. It's just clarifying it and then bringing it to the forefront.
Thank you.
Does somebody want to read this
Mayor, I'll make the motion.
Motion, but not on two.
I move to approve the amendments to the Town of Bluffton Code of Ordinances, Chapter 23, Unified Development Ordinance as submitted with the following amendments. 1, Section 5.15.8.1, medium house type, a revision of the characteristic larger than a cottage and smaller than a village house to larger than a cottage. No end needed.
Is there a
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I didn't hear this one.
Aye.
Thank you.
I'm just quiet.
And for the record, and just a point of clarification, that's an I, not a
I saw
one.
that.
So,
after I said it.
great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving now into our consent agenda items. Is there anything on here that council would like to be removed or to be discussed? If not, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That is unanimous. Is there a motion?
I make that motion.
Is there a motion to
You will never
adjourn?
get to make that motion as long as he's here.
Adjourn.